Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our third webinar from Pulse Market. Firstly, let me apologize for my camera being dark. It's a technical issue, not trying to hide or anything like that. Today's topic is driving social impact. I keep mixing this word up, but elevating the S in ESG to match the E. Today, we are delighted to have Aisling Connaughton to present to you. Aisling is the co-founder of CYD Connect. Aisling has been working in sustainability for 6 years now. Before I hand over to Aisling, let me just do some housekeeping first. If you could please stay on mute, and questions you can put into the question bar and they will be answered at the end. So Aisling, over to you.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for having me today, Andy. So you've got myself, Aisling, and also Sarah on the line today. And we are going to be talking around, like Andy said, driving social impact. So elevating the S in ESG to meet the E. And so it's one of the questions that actually always comes up is, how important is the S when it comes to ESG? And what does diversity, equity, and inclusion have to do with the climate crisis? And so sustainability is so much more than just the climate crisis. So if we take a step back and kind of remember, obviously, we have 3 pillars to sustainability. The planet is the one that everyone thinks of, the E. Sometimes people get the societal pillar, which includes gender equality, Black Lives Matter, the mental health pandemic we find ourselves in. And then very rarely people get that the 3rd pillar to sustainability is the economy. And we need to figure out how we balance these 3 bubbles to bring our kind of world and business into balance. And so the definition is meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And one of the challenges we've really discovered is that as a species, we have not figured out how we grow this economic bubble, so how we make money without exploiting the planet or exploiting people. And so in academia, we kind of blow out this economic bubble where we're saying we need to figure out how to make money. Making money is a great thing, but how do we do it by maybe serving people and planet instead of exploiting them? And you can see this is where we are right now, an economy that is extractive and that is take. And so when I went back and retrained, like Andy said, my background before working in sustainability was that I worked in crisis communications. So I was communications director for the 2nd biggest tech company in the world. And I realized businesses that didn't have a sustainability strategy had a crisis strategy instead. And so I went back and retrained 6 years ago. And when I was studying, my professor would say, sometimes in sustainability, it can feel quite doom and gloom, but actually the best academic minds in the world have come together and they've figured out what we need to do to bring the world into balance. There's more than one goal, there's 17 of them, and they're all interconnected, but they have 2 big challenges. Firstly, most people haven't heard of them, low citizen awareness, and secondly, they don't actually do anything. So they're like this to-do list for humanity. And businesses and the private sector have a huge role in our economy and world because it's very much the doers of society. And so it's how do we accelerate the Sustainable Development Goals and make them really change our planet instead of just being a to-do list on our pin board like they are for many industries. And so if you look at them in another way, you can see that you've got the planet, which is our base, which has 4 of the Sustainable Development Goals. And then we really see how many societal goals that exist. So you have no poverty, good health and well-being, gender equality, 0 hunger. And then above that, you have the economic pillars. And then above that, you have partnerships for the goals because we all need to work together. Because the SDGs aren't just a list of goals, they carry the hopes, dreams, rights, and expectations of people everywhere. So we really need to figure out how we make them happen. So just if we touch quickly on the E of ESG, the environment aspect, we've kind of got to a point where everyone is talking about carbon, right? So our carbon footprint is the total amount of greenhouse gas emissions that are put into the atmosphere. And every person, business, entity has a carbon footprint. But at COP of the last 2 years running, there has been this term called carbon tunnel vision, where we are just laser focused on carbon. And many academics will say, we have to be focused on carbon because if we don't sort the E, there's nothing else left, right? So there's no business on a burning planet. We have to sort the greenhouse gas issue and the environmental aspects. However, we are in something called carbon tunnel vision, and we do need to start looking at all the other aspects because they are all interconnected, and that societal pillar is absolutely key. So we're going to spend a bit more time kind of working through the S. And there's these societal issues that really came to the forefront really during the pandemic. They were always bubbling, but I think during the pandemic, we really felt them come about even more. 2020 was the year that we'll never forget, but it was the year that also George Floyd was murdered in front of the world's eyes. Um, Also, the mental health issues that we're seeing, young adults severely impacted, and then so many like trans rights, human rights. And so all of these societal issues really came to the forefront. And you might say, but what do they have to do with my business, really? How are they affecting my business? And if we go back to what is the purpose of a business, we can really see that it was Milton Friedman who said in the 1970s that a purpose of a business was to make as much money as possible for its shareholders. So at any cost, it doesn't matter how you're affecting the planet or how you're treating your workers, how you're treating society. The purpose of a business is to just make as much money as possible. In 1998, John Elkington, a British academic, coined the term triple bottom line. So businesses are reporting on people, planet, as well as profit. And then in 2005, that's when the Sustainable Development Goals were born. And really what we're working towards is a systems change where we can, like we mentioned right at the beginning, it's about kind of balancing those bubbles and how we create money by doing good for people and planet instead of the shareholder primacy that we've been speaking about. So it's really around thinking, what is the purpose of your business? How is it serving the societal aspects within your business as well? And so this is where diversity, equity, and inclusion really comes in. And again, I spend a lot of time with academics now, and they'll often say, when they're trying to investigate which businesses are greenwashing, the first thing they'll do is look at who's on their leadership board. Because if it's just a group of white men, it means that they haven't started embedding DE&I through their business. And that's where they'll start looking for first to start investigating. And that's because also diversity isn't just about a kind of box ticking exercise. It's really about the ideas that people share and the thinking. Einstein said it best when he said, the thinking that created the problem is not going to create the solutions. So we need different thinking, and that's really what's going to drive innovation. And you can see that people really only share very, very little when they feel they don't belong. As when people feel that they do belong, they're going to open up and share so much more. And I love this quote: diversity has been invited to the party, inclusion has been asked to dance. And another piece as well, because there's diversity, equity, and inclusion. And one of the points I really like to explain the difference on is equity and equality. So the reality is that we live in a world where people get more, some people get more than others, and there's a huge disparity. Equality is the assumption that everyone benefits from the same support and it's considered to be equal. But that doesn't actually work in reality. What we really need is equality. And that means that everyone gets the support they need, which produces equity. But even further along the line, what we could be working towards is justice, which means that the cause of the inequity has been addressed. So that means, sexism, racism, classism, often anything that ends in an ism is a systemic barrier, and that barrier in itself has been removed. And a personal example I have here is, it wasn't until 1976 that women could open bank accounts in the UK and Ireland. Up until that point, you could not open a bank account in your own name. It would have had to be underwritten by a man. You couldn't get a bank loan to set up a business. Thankfully, now we live in a time where men and women have equality, and I could open a bank account and set my own business up. I didn't have that challenge when I set my business up. However, I am dyslexic, and that means I can't fill out a bank form by myself. So it means that I needed that extra support in filling out the bank form, and that's equity in action. It doesn't mean that I shouldn't have it just because I have that disability. It means that I just need that extra bit of support. And another key slide I absolutely love is this one, which is called the Wheel of Privilege. And this is also what we learned at COP, which is that the majority of power has been sitting in the center of this wheel. So it's worth taking a moment to kind of go through the wheel and see where you sit. So what is your skin color? What is your ability? What is your sexuality? What are you neurodiverse? What is your mental health? What is your body size? Are you housed? How wealthy are you? Do you speak English? What is your gender? So you can see the majority of the power sits in the center of this wheel. And the challenge is that we need to have kind of more of the outside of the ring in order to innovate, to solve some of the world's issues, because we can't be talking about solving poverty if we've never experienced it. So it's really about bringing the center of that power to other aspects of the wheel. And that's really how we're going to innovate, because we need new thinking and different ways of coming up with solutions. And so this wheel of privilege is really always, when I'm at the UN conferences, the moment that kind of everyone goes, oh my gosh, I'm so, so privileged, because it's also about understanding how privileged we are and how we can use our power as a force for good, and all of the kind of benefits that we can do to really kind of make a difference in this world and use our power in the right way. But really, it's all connected to fundamental human rights. And human rights are the basic freedoms and protections that belong to every single person on the planet, no matter where they're from, who they are, or what they believe in. And we can see that compliance is really changing. So CSRD, which we'll touch on in a bit more detail, really requires companies to disclose detailed reporting on environmental and climate-related risks, but also social impacts and governance practices. And social impact is also a key part of CSRD. So it's not just focused on the E aspects. And so we know it was implemented to achieve the targets of the EU Green Deal. It's mandatory sustainability reporting in the EU. We started with large businesses this year, and it's progressing to SMEs as we go forward. And we know that as well, that businesses that are kind of suppliers to bigger businesses have to start getting this reporting in place, because really you have to make this happen for your business, right? Because what does this actually mean for you? It means that you need to start reporting on these ESG impact areas, because if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. And the policy is coming down the line, as well as just wanting to do the right thing. So what I've pulled out now is some of the kind of questions. Often, businesses are like, oh, but what does this actually mean for my business? How is it actually going to how am I going to make changes? So with governance, so the G of ESG, it's all around who is steering the ship. So how are social and environmental decisions being incorporated into the business? Does your business have solid and clear ethics and transparency policies and practices? And how is stakeholder primacy embedded into the business's DNA? So, as we said, Milton Friedman, the purpose of a business is to make as much money as possible for its shareholders. We know now he got that wrong. And that's not what you would be taught. I did my business degree in 2005. That's what we were taught. It's not what you're taught when you do an MBA today. That's not what you're taught the purpose of a business is. And so governance is looking at how are you impacting all of your stakeholders? Who are your stakeholders? And then how are you impacting them? The environmental aspect includes your environmental management system. So what is your renewable energy use, the measurement of your greenhouse gas emissions or carbon, your waste management, your recycling practices, water management, your targets and reduction strategies. And then community, so this includes the employee and supply chain. So this is also diversity as well, your DE&I strategy. How have you helped grow the local economy through local purchases and new jobs? What have you given back through corporate giving initiatives? And then your responsible supply chain management, and making sure that you may have certified suppliers, etc. So really, how are you supporting your local community, and what are you doing to make sure that they're also growing and thriving? Workers will also fall under the S. So what is the financial security, living wage, bonuses, health, wellness and safety, career development? How robust is your career development program? Engagement and satisfaction. What are your employee benefits and how engaged are your employees? And then your customers. So, obviously we would like to think that we're always treating our customers well, but many businesses profit by not treating customers well, and we've seen this with mobile phone companies and gyms, etc. So how well are you serving your customers? Do you have policy or practices around ethical marketing? Are you GDPR compliant? Obviously, in this market, we have to be, but are you following the legislation in other countries? Do you provide guarantees or warranties? And are you delivering on your customers' expectations? So these are some of the metrics that you'll start reporting on. Because if you don't measure it, you can't improve it. And that's why it's really important to start with a baseline so that you can start measuring and improve and get on a kind of treadmill for improvement. And Sarah, I'll hand over to you now.
Thanks so much for that, Aisling. That was absolutely brilliant as ever with you. I'll certainly take a few key points from that, and I really appreciated you bringing up a positive approach to the way that we'll balance the world. And I'll certainly be pinning that quote from Verna Myers. That's something I need to keep forefront on my laptop. Yep, so I will just do a quick whistle-stop introduction to Pulse, who we are and what we do. I won't take up too much of anyone's time. So Pulse Market, we are an expert-led, tech-enabled sustainability ecosystem. So our expertise comes from the likes of Aisling, who we partner with, and our tech skills come from the platform that we have. So we offer a range of solutions for sustainability. We have training, ESG discovery, supplier discovery, implementation, right through to future planning for your sustainability journey. And we combine these on the Pulse platform. And on the platform, you can collect and manage and store your organization and your value chain's ESG data. You can store it once and use it many times, which is key for supporting your compliance, sustainability regulations and frameworks such as CSRD, SECR, B Corp, which is something that Aisling can certainly help you with for sure. Aisling, could you move on to the next slide, my next final slide? So this is a little bit more about the platform itself. It's a secure and robust platform. And we ensure you've got data governance and data lineage, which is essential if you're wanting to be transparent in all your sustainability reporting regulations. And within the platform, we've got bespoke modules for CSRD and B Corp, where you can collect all the relevant data across your organization and across your value chain for your reporting capabilities. And on the platform, we've got a dashboard that's packed with charting, reporting tools, charts and graphs, which are easily downloaded and exported out into your board reports and sustainability reports. There's so much more to the platform, but what I want to get across is that it's really key that you can store your data once and manage it in different ways, and also that we've got different solutions, expert-led solutions that we can offer. If you want to find out a little bit more about it, you can contact myself or Andy. We've got contact details at the end of the slide deck. So yeah, connect with us on LinkedIn too, or go to our website, pulsemarket.com. And I'll pass over to Andy to see if we've got any questions we'd like to put out there for Aisling.
Thanks, guys. Very good, Sarah. Very good, Aisling. It's always informative, no matter how many webinars I sit on. It really does make me realize that a lot of the legislation that's coming through is not just that we require being compliant. It also makes a lot of sense for a business to work in that way. I particularly do like the diversity and inclusion piece, because whilst I know there's a lot of debate around statistics around diversity and inclusion, the most important one is more than one voice, more than a voice of people from all the same background, the same arena, the same class, the same color. It doesn't make sense. You don't get an answer to anything. So let me have a look at some of the questions that have come in. The first one is one after a good one from an ex-banker like myself. Is there any grant support available to take on this journey? I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but also, Andy, the point you made earlier around, the different thinking. I used to live in China, and when I worked in China, the CEO used to say, everyone was petrified of him, but he used to say, everyone should have a different point of view to me. Because if you don't come here and have a different point of view around this table, one of us is fired and it's not me. And that's what he used to say. One of us is losing our jobs if you have the same point of view as me and it's not me. And it was petrifying. Do you know what I mean? It was so scary. But it was that thing that he didn't want a load of yes men just telling him what he wanted to hear. And in lots of ways, that's diversity, not in a way that you would think, right? But it is diversity of thought, and it is diversity of, you have to be able to bring different views if we're going to grow and develop, right? Instead of us all just thinking the same way, because it's not going to make the change that's required.
Absolutely.
And yes, so your point around grants. So there's so much support. And this is where, we should be really lucky we're in Ireland. So my business works with lots of different companies across the world. And the supports we have in Ireland are actually far superior really to other markets. So they're really worth kind of exploring. So if you are Enterprise Ireland, Let me just go through here. So if you are an Enterprise Ireland client, the first step is something called the Climate Action Voucher. So this is 100% covered by Enterprise Ireland. They've just upped it. It used to be 2 days of consultancy at €1,800. They told me yesterday that they're going to up it to 3 days of consulting, which brings it up a bit. So it's totally covered by Enterprise Ireland. And that's just really about you starting your sustainability and action plan. So this is step one. This is just going to get you on a platform so that you can start tracking and measuring and really putting all of your data into a platform so that you can start tracking and measuring and improving. So that's step one. Then the other grant they have is called the Green Start Grant. And so this is covered up to 80% by Enterprise Ireland. So for example, the project cost would be €6,300. Enterprise Ireland would pay 5,000. You as a business would pay 1,300, and you can get this grant up to 3 or 4 times now. And so this is really going to kind of give you guidance with further activities. So if you need a life cycle analysis, if you need a sustainability strategy, if you're preparing for CSRD, if you need to really engage your employees or your customers around sustainability. So it's really dependent on what your business is. So if you are an EI business or a local enterprise business, I really recommend that you reach out to your development advisor and kind of get moving on this, because these grants are available, but the key is they will not be available once it becomes mandatory that you do this. So as soon as you fall under scope for CSRD, where it's a requirement, they will not support you, because now you just have to do it. So it's really about, this is, if you're on your journey for what's happening, they're going to support you on the way. As soon as you fall into scope, the support goes, because you just have to do it. Otherwise, you're going to get a fine. And I checked that, Andy. It's correct.
Okay, yeah. Aisling checked that because I recently was made aware of it, and it makes perfect sense. It actually brings me to the next question, which was, when should I start this process? The fact that you do not get grant support when you're required to do something. So being within the law is not a reward. Getting ready to be within the law is rewarded by giving you support. So you should start now. Now, when we say you should start now, it's collecting the data, getting your journey mapped, getting people like Aisling in to explain to you what strategy would work for you to get to a place where you will be compliant with rules and regulations. CSRD kicks off. Well, it's kicked off, but in January 1, it's going to grab another, I think, 30,000 companies across Europe before any company will be in scope eventually. And you will have to you have to have your data in place, sliced, diced in proper order, and you have to be able to demonstrate progress. Even if you're not in scope and you're providing services to companies that are in scope, you really need to have your data in order. The last thing you want is to have a big client such as, Guinness's or somewhere like that suddenly say, we need this information. And if you're a supplier that they have to use, fine, you can have time to gather it. If they can use another supplier, they may well do to get themselves into condition. I don't know if you agree with that, Aisling, as the start now is the best process.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of what we do now is actually tender writing for supporting businesses as well. So their tender now says, what is your sustainability strategy and action plan? And so, business will come to us and say, okay, help us with this piece of work now. But you do have to do the piece of work before you can write the tender, really. Do you know what I mean? You have to have that piece where you're, like you say, reporting. Like, it's always just about getting your baseline. Businesses often come to us and they're really kind of afraid. They're like, oh gosh, I don't want to open this can of worms of what's going down my supply chain. I don't want to know. I'm scared to look under the bonnet, and how much time is this going to take and how much money is it going to take? But it is always just a starting point. You just have to start somewhere and then start improving. And, no one's going to hugely judge you. It's just about getting on that treadmill of improvement. Like we say, it's never as bad as you think it's going to be.
Okay, just on to the next question. We clearly have a few scared people in the webinar. When will I get time, or will any of us get time to do this? Well, that's where I have an opportunity as CRO of Pulse Markets to be able to do a very bold advertisement on Pulse. Time has to be spent first and foremost. There has to be buy-in within your company. If there's only one person in the company doing it, it's not going to work. Everyone has to be aware of the plan. But that's a communications piece of work. That's making sure everyone understands. The consultants we employ are the ones who they sit with you to make sure that you are gathering the correct data. It is data you will have. In all cases, in 99% of the cases, you will have the data. You just need to make sure that you capture it and put it into in my opinion, a platform such as the Pulse platform, where it's kept forever. It's stored once and can be used many, many times. So you can use it for all levels of sustainability reporting that you need to do. You can use it for your board papers, so that you can demonstrate to the board if you're a sustainable employee, and in that you're a company big enough to have a head of sustainability. Well, they have one place they can look to make sure everything is in order and everything is being followed. Time is really at the outset. You start by getting things in place, and then you make changes as you go. I think that's probably the best way to describe it. Aisling, Sarah?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the reason I'm a fan of the Pulse platform is because you do have that consistency. So it is like a shared area where everything's there. But if often you have someone who works in sustainability, then they move on to another business. At least all of the data is there, so that the reports can be pulled straight away. So whoever replaces them has a very, very simple and easy way to kind of continue your sustainability journey. It doesn't leave with your employee.
Excellent. But the question in is, how do I manage to be sustainable if my suppliers aren't? Well, first thing you got to do is you got to identify that. It's one of the features that I think is fairly unique with Pulse platform, is that our consultants will pull together a questionnaire that allows you get the details from your suppliers. That the platform then goes down and emails all of your suppliers and requests a response. We manage the responses in a way that ensures you've got who's responding, who's not responding, what's the answers, should you grade them, and that information is pulled also to your data points, allowing you have a real picture. So you might think your carbon footprint is X, but it's X plus. It's X plus the trucks on the road that are using diesel to bring your supplies to your office. They have to be added on. That is part of your footprint. So the platform would manage that for you. We would just need all your details as to what suppliers you have. Example is a recent client is 900 suppliers, and we're going down the value chain or the supply chain, depending on which way you look at it, to identify any areas of issues. And I know from speaking with Aisling in the past, there are some shocks that people can find as they go along.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's, I worked in the beauty industry for a long time, and you'd work, animal testing is the big challenge in the beauty industry, where you think you're buying a product that hasn't been tested on animals, but when you go down your supply chain, all the ingredients in the supply chain have been tested on animals, and then you mix it. Your finished product might not be, but your supply chain has. And that's always a real shock for businesses. Do you know what I mean? Because they have a bunny on the front of their product and they're like, oh gosh, now I've opened my supply chain and I'm realizing that there is an animal testing issue. But the thing is, it's about figuring that out and then putting things in place to fix it going forward. Do you know what I mean? And you have to know your supply chain. And like we say, it's also going to become mandatory. You also just can't push problems down your supply chain, which is like what we've seen a lot of bigger businesses do. We're great. We're going to push all the problems down our supply chain and they can deal with it. So it's really about making bigger businesses have accountability for the supply chain as well, instead of kind of kicking the can down the road.
Great, thanks, Aisling, for that. Question in is, how secure is your platform? The platform was designed and built by our founder and CEO, who is a software engineer who worked in Silicon Valley for decades, and has come back to Ireland to actually build this platform and set up Pulse Market. The platform is investment banking grade secure, as he built platforms for the banking industry for years. So it's a very secure platform. I can't give you the ISO numbers or whatever. I don't know if Sarah can, but it's a secure.
I think it might be 27001, whatever that means.
Right. I have one more question I see here. Always one about money. How is the platform costed? Well, as Aisling spoke to you about grants and so on, so the first grant that's available is for 1,800. So the platform, as we were a startup, we're kind of coming beyond startup at this point, but as a startup, we are looking to get that onto our platform so that we can learn and improve and constantly grow as well. So we are very open to conversations. However, as you can see on screen there, which Aisling has kindly put up, there's an 1,800 grant to develop an initial uh, plan, let's say, and that's available from Enterprise Ireland and from your local enterprise offices. You can go in and try and apply for it. And I haven't seen a case yet where anyone's been refused. I don't know if Aisling has, but we
No,
haven't seen
definitely
anyone.
keen to get
Yeah.
businesses on using this one. That's why it's 100%.
Yeah, and the government are putting a lot of money in. I think I heard 300 million to Enterprise Ireland was handed out so that they could start the process and be good Europeans and be good citizens of the world to get this whole thing kicked off. We, as a company, are looking to get as many companies started as possible onto our platform and on the journey. And in that way, we will be open to discussions about what companies can and cannot afford to get onto the platform to make life easier. In my opinion, this platform not only does everything it says, but it also saves potentially the hiring of an individual whose job it would be to put all this information into cabinets or SharePoints or whatever. It's saving on that, and it's a license fee that is a lot cheaper than an employee would cost. So the cost, I don't believe, is particularly onerous. Okay, it looks like we may be getting to finish on time. There's no more questions come in. I don't know, Aisling, if you want to say anything before we go, or Sarah? No?
Yeah, no, I just think it's good to just, I think often we're kind of afraid to start, or we think there isn't enough time or money. And I do think, the money, if you can get the Enterprise Ireland support, the money is there. I think from a time perspective, that's where Pulse is so great, because it really is going to take all of the kind of heavy lifting out of it for you, so that it streamlines a lot for you. So you can kind of dump everything into the platform, and it helps it organize everything. And yeah, the sooner the better, because there's no point in kicking this down the road. It's gonna come. So
Yeah,
definitely
and
don't be
I
afraid
think
of your journey.
you made me think of a point there. Actually, and I used to run a management development company, and we train companies and people all over the world. And an expression I'm going to use now, some of you might get annoyed at, but they say, where do poor managers hide? Not enough time, not enough resource, not enough time, not enough resources. And that is no offense for the person who asked the question, where am I going to get the time for this? You always start with that question, but you find a way. And it is hugely important that you go down this journey, because if you're not on this journey, you're going to be in trouble in no time.
Okay. And we make it
Thank
good fun.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Very much appreciate your time. And we will see you again at the next webinar, I hope. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.